Hello, friends, and welcome back to r/ProRevenge. Let's start out with a story about the neighbor who was stealing money from our OP and see how it turned out. But before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to our channel if you're new here and turn on notifications so you don't miss a new video every single day. And our first story. Steal from me, I'll ruin your career. This was about 2 years ago in college. I just moved into a house off campus with 3 of my closest friends. There were 2 other college guys already living there. All these guys were doing Air Force ROTC with me. Basically, you go into the military after you graduate. I really liked all my roommates and the house except for one of the dudes that was already living there. He had a dog and would constantly rip up, pee on the carpet, and wouldn't even clean it up. Furthermore, he would yell at us for leaving dirty dishes in the sink, while he was the one making the vast majority of the mess. I had a job working 30 hours a week and doing school full-time and doing ROTC. I had a job as a server, so I would make quite a lot of tips, $300 a week. I'd leave the cash in my room boxed up because I trusted everyone in the house. We were all going to join the military, and integrity is a big thing. So I go to deposit my tips in the bank after not going for about a month, and I'm shocked when my cash deposit is only about $200 when I knew it had to be at least $1,200. I knew someone was stealing my tips then. It then made sense because my deposits had seemed a little low for a while. I was furious because I was barely scraping by, working my butt off trying to pay for college. So I buy a security camera for my room and hide it. I get all the documents from my work regarding the tips I've made over the past few months. I continue leaving my tips in the box unconcealed as bait. I don't tell any of my roommates this. Sure enough, I leave for a trip and get a notification on my phone. I watch as this mofo that I trusted steals about $300 in cash from me, taking only $20 bills so I wouldn't notice. Well, the next day back from the trip, I schedule a meeting with our ROTC commander. I bring him all the evidence and video footage and tell him about my awful experiences with him in my house with my other roommates as witnesses. Long story short, he got kicked out of ROTC and ruined his career. He had to pay me back about $1,000. I let him off easy. And he had to pay the military back about $9,000. He'd been getting paid by them for about a year. In addition, we go to an expensive school and he chose a useless major, so he stacked high in student debt with no real way out. And finally, he just quit his job because he thought he could get away with stealing from me and watching TV at home, and he just crashed his dream car he'd been working on for a while because he drives like an idiot. I still see him every so often on campus and smile at him. I hope you learn to start depositing your cash. At the very least, get one of those lockable security cases. And our second story. Trying to trick me? Well, I know the owner. So this happened last year when I was about to buy my very first car. My father had picked out the car for me just before he passed away, and therefore I felt like I had to get exactly this car. Not the most logical decision, but hey, it was a nice car. And it was kind of the last gift from my dad. So I checked out the car, tested it, written a contract to buy it, and put in a few notes. Since it was a used car, it did have some scratches in the paint, and the shelf in the trunk had a huge hole in it. I'd taken picture proof of each flaw so that I could document them and compare them to the potential fix. The contract also stated that all scratches and errors would need to be fixed, else I could back out of the deal without problems. Turns out this was all very necessary. A week after signing the contract, they called me and told me the car was now ready for pickup. I drove there alone, checked out the car, quickly noticed that the trunk shelf was now missing, and I pointed this out. Afterwards, I quickly realized that not a single scratch had been fixed, and there was a new scratch on the hood of the car. Since I had written the contract, no one else was supposed to drive the car, so this new scratch was a scandal. I was furious, quickly took a picture and demanded that this was fixed. The sales rep agreed to have it fixed, clearly embarrassed, and we agreed that I would pick it up the week after. The next week, when I came to pick up the car with my brother, we were met by a new sales rep. The trunk shelf had been replaced and most scratches had been poorly fixed. You could see where they'd been, though. Now they were painted white. Except the one on the hood, which was huge and deep, by the way. I demanded once again that this was fixed, and the sales rep quickly ran out to get the manager. My brother was outraged, going on about how terrible the service was here, that I had now come to pick up my car 2 times, and both times they had not lived up to the contract. The manager came out. He was probably mid-40s, smug, a know-it-all who was used to dealing with young, upset women. He looked at the scratch, and then this happened. "You want to cancel the contract over this? This is nothing." "I expect you to fix this scratch," I said, "as we agreed in the contract." "You could easily drive around with this. It's not a problem." "I want it fixed. This is a deep scratch. The car will start to rust from here." He rolls his eyes at me, then pulls out something that looks like Tip-X fluid, something you use to correct spelling errors written with ink, and a safety pin. I watch him silently as he dipped the tip of the pin into the white paint and carelessly covered up part of the scratch. "You don't have to do it right now. I want it done properly," I say. "This is how it's done," he yelled at me. I waited patiently, and about 30 seconds later, he was done, with what looked like the crappiest fix ever. He'd managed to cover the middle of a long scratch, but just a bit in the middle. So now it looked like two smaller scratches, still deep and obvious to the naked eye. He asked if I was satisfied now, and I just left the store without my new car. When we got home, we sent the sales rep an email saying we would like to cancel the deal as we believe the car did not live up to the contract. The manager promptly responded saying that the car lived up to the contract and that if I backed out now, then I would have to pay for all the repairs and fixes they had done on the car. At this point, I was done, and I wanted this manager fired. So I did what any sane person would do. I reached out to the owner. Turns out the son of the owner, who by chance happened to actually run this and another of their dealerships, was an old friend of mine from childhood. So I sent my old friend an email with a copy of the contract, the email from the manager, the pictures of the damages, and the pictures of the fixes. I naturally put the manager in CC of the email so that he could see that I had escalated the case. Needless to say, the manager once again promptly responded, saying he would personally make sure that my car was in pristine order and that I could pick it up 2 days later. When I picked up the car, it was indeed in pristine order, absolutely as new. Still not convinced they didn't give me a brand new car. The manager also gave me a few bottles of champagne, apologized for his previous behavior, and gave me a few coupons to have my first few checks for free. After months of fighting, I finally had my car, and I think that manager will think twice before trying to trick a young buyer again. It's because the manager was a scumbag. He thought, "I'm the manager, I have authority. This customer can shut up and take the car as it is." Now he's kissing butt to win over the customer so he doesn't get in more trouble. And our last story. Farmer spends 16 years studying law by himself so he could sue a powerful chemical firm. Mr. Wang, who's in his 60s, lives in Wushitan. The man said he would forever remember the year of 2001 when his land was flooded by the toxic waste discharged by Kiha Group. It was the eve of the Lunar New Year, and Mr. Wang was playing cards and making dumplings with his neighbors. All of a sudden, they realized that the house they were in was flooded by the wastewater from the nearby Kihu factory. The wastewater also flooded part of the farmland in the village. According to the report, a government document from 2001 claimed that the affected farmland cannot be used for a long time due to the pollution. Between 2001 to 2016, it's been suggested that Kiha continued to dump hazardous waste into the village, whose residents rely upon agriculture for a living. The company produced polyvinyl chloride and released 15 to 20,000 tons of chemical waste every year. Kiha has reportedly created a 71-acre wasteland with calcium carbide residue and a 478-acre pond with its liquid waste. In 2001, Mr. Wang wrote a letter to the Land Resources Bureau of Kikuhar to complain about the pollution Kiha had brought to his village. He said while dealing with the local officials, he was repeatedly asked to produce evidence to prove that the village's land had been polluted. Mr. Wang told a reporter, "I knew I was in the right, but I did not know what law the other party had broken or whether or not there was evidence." He received the interview in his small home, which he spent 50 yuan, or 5.8 pounds per month, renting from the village's authority. As a result, Mr. Wang decided to study law by himself, an endeavor he would carry on pursuing for the next 16 years. The farmer, who had dropped out of primary school at the 3rd grade, started reading through a dozen law books with the help of a dictionary. At the time, he did not have money to buy the book, so he spent day after day reading the books at the local bookstore and copying the relevant information by hand. In return, he would give bags of free corn to the shopkeeper for letting him stay there. Not only that, he also used the legal knowledge he had learned to help his neighbors gather evidence. Their farms had also been polluted by the Keha group, said Mr. Wang. In 2007, a Chinese law firm specializing in handling pollution-related cases started providing free legal advice to Mr. Wang and his neighbors. They also agreed to help the villagers file petition to the court. However, due to unspecified complications, the court only began processing Mr. Wang and his neighbor's case in 2015, 8 years after the original petition had been made. People's Daily Online reported, thanks to the evidence Mr. Wang had gathered in the 16 years, Mr. Wang and his neighbors apparently won the first instance. The Angangsi District Court of Kigahar ruled that the families in Yushitan Village would receive financial compensation from Keha Group amounting to 820,000 yuan, 96,000 pounds. The date of the first instance was not revealed in the report. Keha Group has appealed against the court's decision. The case is being processed at the Angangsi District Court as of writing. A determined Mr. Wang told the reporter, "We will certainly win. Even if we lose, we will continue to battle." Only 96,000, but if that was in a first world country like Australia or the United Kingdom or the USA, it'd be millions more. ProRevenge, though. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.